It's the 11th of January 2019. I'm here at Quarndon Cricket Club and I'm talking to
Robin Williamson.
Welcome, Chapman.
John Page.
Gentlemen, we're going to touch on something quite specific before we move on to looking at some of the characters and cricketers that you played alongside and against. And of course Quarndon was when it was first founded, played for 60-70 years in friendly cricket. And I know there was a club called, or a team called the Grasshoppers, that was quite prominent in Derbyshire cricket. Can you just give us a flavour of what Grasshopper cricket was all about?
Well, the Grasshoppers, they only played on a Sunday. They didn't play on a Saturday cricket at all. I think I'm right in saying that, Rob.
Yeah, you know.
And at that time, of course, in Derby District, most clubs played Saturday and Sunday.
Right.
And the Grasshoppers, of course, then built up an association with clubs through Derby District
Right.
to play these friendly games on a Sunday. And my recollection, of course, is that Quarndon were looking for... They were doing well, but they wanted an influx of some new players, and it was opportune at the time to use some of the Grasshoppers who came to play at Quarndon on the Saturday.
Right.
Which was breaking a little bit with the Quarndon, but the Grasshoppers were still playing on the Sunday. And I think very quickly after that, Rob, I think the Grasshoppers just disappeared.
Really?
As a team.
Because they'd gone and presumably found other clubs, as you've just said, some come to Quarndon.
I think it went on for quite a bit longer than that, didn't it, Mal?
The Grasshoppers continued to play on a Sunday for at least another 8 years.
Right.
But what it was that the Hoppers used to play on a Saturday as well, but more and more teams were playing league cricket, and so they didn't play league cricket. They played a good standard of cricket, and so their Saturday fixtures ceased.
Right.
And there were still players obviously wanted to play on a Saturday, and so they were looking for clubs, and there was a connection from here with the Hoppers. Some players played on a Sunday with the Hoppers, and that led to an amalgamation, if you like, between the two clubs, because Quarndon needed to increase their volume of players as well, and needed to increase the volume of good players as well.
Quality players, yeah.
And Hoppers were, by and large, decent players.
And were these players who, sorry, the club itself, Grasshoppers, presumably didn't have its own ground, or
No,
was
correct.
it like a
There were nomad
itinerant
side.
cricket club? Yeah.
Yeah.
Nomad side, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so they didn't have to fork out any money in terms
Right.
of various grounds. They
Yeah.
played on wherever they could get on the Sunday or the Saturday, as Malcolm
Yeah.
said.
But presumably couldn't join a league because they didn't
No.
have the
Well, in
requisite.
fact, they did. They played in the Derby Central League. Before,
Without a ground.
without a ground.
They wouldn't have to do that today. would
And
they?
and they did that for a few years, but
Right.
it was worth the Central League team's benefit, if you like. It was to their benefit because they used to like a drink, and a lot of those clubs had a bar,
Yeah.
and also they were a good team, and they played in the Derby Central League
Yeah.
for 2-3 seasons, I would have thought.
What was the motivation for people to want to play for Grasshoppers and not be affiliated to a club, do you
I
think?
think basically it was an invitation from the people that ran the Grasshoppers
Right.
to people that they knew could play at a reasonable standard, and I
Yeah.
think it developed from there. But I played in the Central Derbyshire League for British Rail then, and I cannot remember the Grasshoppers playing in that Central Derbyshire League.
Right.
But the Central Derbyshire League then, in terms of the clubs that played in it, they all had the best grounds in the county, far better than any in the Derbyshire County League.
Yeah.
Teams like Belper Meadows, Duffield played in it in the Central Derbyshire League, British Rail, Swartston, Obveston Bolton, they played in that league
Yeah.
at that time before they actually went into what is now the Derbyshire
Yeah.
County League.
And did any of you play for Grasshoppers?
Yeah, Malcolm, I
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Oh, did you? Right. So you were
But not on a
invited.
Saturday.
Right.
No.
So you were invited to play then?
Yeah, played on a Sunday.
My dad had played for them before before I really started playing.
Right.
I mean, the benefit for me is I could open the batting on the Saturday for Quarndon and then go and open the batting for the Grasshoppers on the Sunday. And friendly cricket, you'd tend to, at your club, not open the batting if you played the friendly stuff. So
that's interesting because I've heard of the Friars, I've not heard of the Grasshoppers.
Right.
And so it's quite an interesting,
Well,
from
we
a
had
social perspective,
had a very
just to
strong connection.
hear about that.
Very strong connection with the Hoppers, and that would be one of the reasons why they amalgamated with Quarndon when they fell down. But we used to play the Hoppers on a bank holiday up here, and it was always, it was a day game. It was a good game, but it was played hard.
A few beers after.
Oh, yeah, 1 or 3. Yes.
but the fixtures we had were, it was competitive cricket. So although it was sort of friendly cricket, you played a good standard. So you learn how to play it from a youngster starting off in it. You learn how to build an innings and watch good players and learn from it.
We said at the start of this interview that we're going to touch upon some of the really good players that you played with and against. And if I can just come to you first of all, Robin, on this, because you went to Repton School and opened the batting with one of Derbyshire's finest batsmen ever, really. I suppose his stats and his record stands up to the best of Derbyshire players, Chris Adams.
Yeah.
So what age were you when you went to Repton, and what were your first impressions of Chris as a cricketer?
Well, I'd known Chris for a few years because we played the junior county stuff together. So it was through that connection that we got invited to go there, really. So yes, I mean we'd been mates for a number of years. I mean, when I first went there in that first year, Chris opened the batting and broke all records. But I used to keep wicket then as well, so I didn't always open with him, although I did at sort of county level.
Yeah.
So,
Was David playing? Because David Adams played here, didn't he?
He did,
Sometime.
briefly.
Because quite a few people have said David was more naturally talented. I don't think I'd say it to Chris's face, but one or two people have said he was a very, very talented player, David.
Chris is one of the most determined people I've ever met, and you could tell that his attitude was that he was going to do it. Dave at that time, because Dave was a couple of years older than Chris and I, so we'd sort of seen him through the junior county stuff, and I mean he was extremely talented. And
Could you see even at Repton as a young man that Chris was likely to go on? Was he that much better than the other players you were playing with and against?
Yes, I mean he sort of about a year or so before just started sort of accelerating ahead of everybody else at that level. Went through a spell where there was a pack of us who were sort of similar level, but he just took off, and it was down to his attitude. He was such a strong-willed, and he just wanted it, and he's gone on to do what he's done.
Absolutely. So, from your perspective, gentlemen, Malcolm and John, who were the players, star players, if you like, imports, overseas, local Derbyshire players or other county players that stood out for you in your time, either playing or watching at Quarndon?
Well, Butcher, who played up here, he was special, wasn't he?
That's Ian Butcher.
Ian Butcher.
Ian Butcher.
Yeah.
He was a good player. He was. And Claude Henderson was a wonderful player and a lovely man.
He was.
Yeah, he was special. He played here 2 seasons, I think.
I think the second year he left early to go on a South African A tour, so we didn't quite get him for 2 years. But yes, he came back the second year.
What was the process for recruiting somebody like Henderson? Were you relying on somebody knowing somebody, or potluck, or what?
No, I've no idea.
I've got a feeling
Chris might be able to.
somebody had played with him before and perhaps had a contact. I think it was Greg Hill had played with him before. I mean, Claude is the best bowler I've ever played with. He was just a wonderful bowler. He, left arm spinner who just varied his pace, and didn't turn it miles, but didn't have to. And he watched batters and what have you. I mean, the best league bowler I played with was Andy Clarke, the leg spinner, who just you couldn't get him away. It was when you could bowl 23 overs and he'd go for about 50 only. So we weren't chasing many when when he played. But those two are
another spinner that, of course, Quarndon produced or developed was Nathan Dummel, who went onto the Derbyshire staff. Was he someone who at an early age because presumably you would have played alongside him?
Yes,
Robert, yeah.
I mean, I think, I mean, he didn't play his youth stuff here, but we signed him. Rob was about 16, was it, when he came? Something like that. And you could tell straight away, certainly from a batting point of view, how much time he had. You know, he had a lot of time as a batter, but was a very, you know, you could tell he was going to be a good bowler as well. So, you know, yeah, from 16 you knew he was something special. Yeah.
John, did you play? You talked about British Rail earlier on playing, but you played at Quarndon as well, presumably. Yeah. So when did your career at Quarndon begin?
I had a phone call about 1979. I'd played for British Rail for a number of years, then stopped playing, and then I had a phone call from a guy called Derek Trowbridge, they were short one Saturday, had a couple of games, and then I dropped out for a year, then came back about 1981.
Right.
So that was my recollection then. Of coming and playing, and I played basically second team. I was captain for a number of years, and then went on the committee. I was treasurer for a time, and then gradually just wound my career down. But I was playing into my 50s.
Really?
But these guys talk about Andy Clarke, who probably was the best bowler I ever saw up here, but he was quite a nasty guy. You know, if you dropped a catch off Andy Clarke, you got the big stare, and but he was a wonderful bowler.
Yeah.
And of course at that time, he could, like I said, he could bowl 23 overs. Very, very difficult to play against. Wonderful player.
Just out of interest, you know, as you were you a bowler? Were any of you bowlers?
I wasn't a bowler, no.
Yeah, I bowled a bit, but no.
What was the view? Because there's a few bowlers behind me listening to this. But what was the view of other bowlers who didn't get a bowl when somebody was bowling 23 from one and 23 from the other? Was it just an acceptance that that's the way it was?
It's the way it was.
Yeah.
It was the way it was, yeah. And then I think the league then decided to step in and say, look, we don't think this is good for cricket anyway, and so they introduced the rule that there was a maximum number that bowlers could bowl, which was down to I think 10 mouths.
10 it was.
So that meant you lose a 46 over game. You got to use at least 5 bowlers.
Yeah.
I mean, I must say I had a couple of spells as captain, and the hardest thing for me, because most of our sort of players bowled, so some would barely get a bowl, and it was the hardest thing, sort of saying, I'm sorry, you know, you haven't had much of a bowl, because you know we did have some good bowlers who would bowl the majority of the overs. You know, you wanted to win a game, so you know, but it was tough to, you know, a youngster who needed to bowl.
Yeah.
You know, and you'd say, oh, sorry, I haven't bowled you again. But so I think that's a tough. But it was even tougher back when, you know, you paid or they could bowl 23 overs, and I think back then people were more understanding, weren't they?
Did it go to 14 initially?
Yeah.
14. A maximum of 14.
Yeah, but then
that was the first step.
So you'd need 4 bowlers essentially then.
So you've all mentioned bowlers, and obviously Clarke's had quite a few mentioned from all of you, I think. Claude Henderson. What about batsmen then? Either for Quarndon or against you? Who were the standout batsmen that were not necessarily from overseas, but you know, may have been league cricketers locally produced?
When I started, certainly you'd have people like George Schofield at Alderson and Bolton. Bob Young, bless him, who died very, very young, who was excellent. Bob Winthrop at Darley-Dale. Barry Marsh at Langley Mill was more than useful, and every team seemed to have at least one.
Yeah, and you know, when the county players came in, was there that desire were your bowlers wanting to knock their heads off, and were you, you know, what was it like? Because presumably you talked about you'd not had pros. Certainly when we talked to some of the, I think when we talked to you, Malcolm, in one of the early interviews, you said we didn't have pros or Derbyshire players, but then suddenly you've got them in your side. Presumably there's pressure on them to perform, but presumably you also want to knock a few heads off if they're in the opposition. So what were they like to play with and against?
I mean, for me personally, I mean, sort of the best pro as a batter was Tony Borrington, because he talked to me and sort of could weigh up a game and said, right, you know, we need a couple of good overs here. What we'd done is we practiced during the week to, you know, the shots that we were going to do. So if you have a pro like that who Tony scored runs, but he also helped the players around him. Another player we haven't mentioned yet is Matt Dowman, who his first year out of first class he got 1,300-1,400 runs, and he was just magic. You know, he dominated games. You know, talent-wise, he's had so much time. He was a brilliant.
He was a good pro,
cricketer.
wasn't he?
And his bowling was excellent as well. So yeah, and I think that's the key for a good pro is yes, the pressure on them to score runs, but they've also got to help others.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember some times that we had some very good, because Greg Smith played for us, Graham Wagg, I think Nathan would have played at the time probably, and we had an extremely strong side, but some of our worst performances were when we had such strong sides, because in a way people were relying on others as opposed to thinking, well, I'm going to do it myself. So
right.
you know, it's
so there's an expectation that he'll do it.
There was at the time. I mean, it didn't last for long, but you know, you can lower your guard a bit when you've got other good players around you. But
Who was the best batsman you saw in the league? If you had to name one. Oh, good.
There was a guy called Cooper who came over, New Zealander.
Barry Cooper.
Barry Cooper.
At West Ham.
Yeah, he was.
Came over and played at West Ham. He just didn't seem able to bowl at him for a while. I think he had 2 years, and for some reason the second year was not quite the same. But he was special when he first came over.
And played a lot of first-class cricket, didn't he?
Oh yeah, he did. Played Test
in
cricket.
New Zealand, yeah.
He played Test cricket. Yeah.
It was 6 and 8 the first game he played against us.
I remember we were talking about the overseas players, but I remember when I was treasurer we had one player, I think it was a South African, and we paid good money out, and after a few weeks he decided that he wanted more.
All right, that's an interesting one for you.
We had a quick committee meeting and decided to flirt him off back to South Africa.
Right.
that was
Well,
my first year as
Dave bowled the
captain. That was.
This one, Rob.
There's an
That
interesting-
was my first year as captain.
Was
yeah.
that right?
Oh yeah, it was
Yeah.
hard work. That.
And I know that Mr. Ball was not very happy at the time,
But at that time, I remember another player who I admired a lot was Mark Spencer. Who,
Yes.
who,
he was on Derbyshire staff for a
yeah,
while.
in that particular year, I remember a game against A&B, and I wouldn't have felt like this if I wasn't captain, but I'd opened the batting with Dougie Watson, and I got sawn off. Even the umpire said it was. You know, it was a terrible decision, one of the worst I've ever seen. Awful. So I was out for about 3, and then those two got big hundreds, and we didn't quite win the game. But you know, watching those two together, they were magic. I mean, Dougie was a proper pro, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He was the archetypal come to pro. I'll perform for you,
Yeah.
but I want rewarding for it. So,
I was told that before we did even switch the camera on that Dominic Clarke had played a game or two.
yeah.
Yeah, probably the highest profile. I mean, he played 30 odd 40 Test matches, didn't he? So
Yeah.
how did it come about that Dominic played for?
I was captain that year as well.
Were you?
Yeah. He was very good to captain though.
Was it?
Ash Lynch, is it stepson?
Yeah.
So he played for us,
Right.
and I think Dominic was injured, wasn't he? And he was just sort of coming back, so he sort of had to. He was only allowed to bowl in short spells, but he did rather well.
Did he?
In fact, I think one of the games he played was against Hashim Amla's brother, who pro'd for Lullington Park, I
Right.
seem to recall. So he had quite a battle against him that day.
And of course, John Morris has
Yeah.
played up here. His son played for us for
Tom, yeah.
And he got a lot of potential. I don't think he was in love with the game, and John played the odd game.
Yeah.
And,
Adrian Rawlins is another one we haven't mentioned who you've done an interview with,
Yeah.
but he played in the league winning side in '93 and about topped the averages. I think it was just before he started at Derbyshire, but you know, he
Could
looked,
hit the ball. He could.
anything
Right.
short was over
Yeah.
the trees. It was so you know it was.
Well, there's been a plethora of fine players who've played here. I really appreciate your contribution and telling us all about it. Thank you
You're
very
welcome.
much.
Thank you.